Hello and welcome to Salt and Light television coverage of Pope Francis's apostolic voyage to Canada. My name is Matthew Harrison. I will be your host for today, and this is the final full day of the Holy Father in Canada. It's been a busy trip thus far, and certainly, like the other days, today will be no exception. In fact, our own Vatican Bureau Chief Jen Copestake is in Quebec City and reports on what we can expect to see today.
Matthew, this morning Pope Francis has met with his brother Jesuits at the Society of Jesus. He typically does this when he's traveling in a different country if he can. So those meetings are behind closed doors and we don't get access to them. But in the next few days, hopefully we'll hear some of what was said at that meeting. And then after that, we're going to be joining Pope Francis when he meets with the residential school survivors from Eastern Canada. So that's a small group that he's meeting before, of course, we take off for Iqaluit, the capital of Nunavut. That is about 2,000 kilometers north of here, and the final stop on Pope Francis's penitential trip to Canada.
So yes, in fact, thank you, Jen. Jen Copestake, our Vatican Bureau Chief. That visit to Iqaluit, it's going to be a number of different events. There's going to be that private meeting, as Jen said, and then more of a public community kind of celebration where the Holy Father will provide an address to young people and to elders. Now, as Jen noted, there is a meeting with an Indigenous delegation today in Quebec City. Now, this is the first Indigenous meeting, specifically Indigenous meeting, in this Quebec City trip. Now, earlier this week, though, there were several meetings in Alberta, including one at Lac Ste. Anne. And Salt and Light television producer Julian Paparella was at Lac Ste. Anne and shares this report.
Behind me is Lac Ste. Anne. Here, Pope Francis came in a very moving gesture to this place that's so significant for the Indigenous of this region. For generations, and indeed centuries, it's been a place of healing. Here, the Pope came to be close to the water, and most of all, to be close to the people, to be a pilgrim with them.
Es caminar juntos. Walking together, marcher ensemble.
Chers frères et sœurs, je vous salue.
Now, we've actually, the event with the meeting with the Indigenous peoples in Quebec has started a bit early. We're starting about 15 minutes early, so we're going to take you to that live. And the Holy Father is addressing this delegation. Dear brothers and sisters, I offer all of you a warm greeting, and I thank you for coming here from various places. The vastness of this land makes us think of the lengthy path of healing and reconciliation that we are facing together. Indeed, the phrase that has accompanied us since March, when the Indigenous delegates came to visit me in Rome and inspires my visit here among you, is walking together.
Para ver, escuchar, aprender, apreciar cómo viven los pueblos indígenas de este país. No vine como turista. He venido como hermano a descubrir en primera persona los frutos buenos y malos producidos por los miembros de la familia católica local a lo largo de los años. He venido con espíritu penitencial para expresarles el dolor que llevamos en el corazón como Iglesia por el mal que no pocos católicos le causaron apoyando políticas opresivas e injustas. He venido como peregrino con mis limitadas posibilidades físicas para dar nuevos pasos adelante con ustedes y para ustedes, para que se prosiga en la búsqueda de la verdad, para que se progrese en la promoción de caminos de sanación y reconciliación, para que se siga sembrando esperanza en las futuras generaciones de indígenas y no indígenas, que desean vivir juntos fraternalmente en armonía.
Je suis venu au Canada en tant qu'ami
I have come to Canada
pour rencontrer,
as a friend
pour voir,
in order to meet you and to see, hear, learn,
apprécier ce que
and
vivent les
appreciate
peuples autochtones de
how
ce
the
pays.
indigenous populations of this
Je
country
ne suis pas
live.
venu en touriste. Je suis venu en
I
tant
have
que
come
frère
as a brother,
pour découvrir
not
de
as a
moi-même
tourist,
les
but as a
bons
brother,
et
to
mauvais
discover
fruits
firsthand
produits
the
par les membres
good
de la
and bad
famille
fruit borne
catholique
by
locale
members
au fil
of the
des ans.
local Catholic family
Je suis
in the
venu
course
dans
of the
un esprit de
years.
pénitence
I
pour
have
vous
come in a
exprimer
spirit
la
of
douleur
penance
que
to
nous
express my
portons
heartfelt pain at the wrong inflicted on you by not a few Catholics who supported
vous
oppressive
exprimer la douleur
and unjust policies
que je
in
porte
your
dans mon
regard.
cœur et que nous portons comme Église pour le mal qu'un certain nombre de
I
catholiques
have come
vous ont causé en
as a
soutenant des
pilgrim,
politiques oppressives et
despite my
injustes envers
physical limitations,
Je suis
to
venu
take
comme pèlerin
steps, to
avec
take
des
further
possibilités
steps
physiques
forward
limitées
with you
pour faire de
and
nouveaux
for
pas
you.
en avant, avec vous et pour vous,
I do
pour
this
poursuivre la recherche
so
de
that
la
progress
vérité,
may be made
pour
in the
progresser dans la
search for
promotion des
truth,
parcours de guérison et de
so that the
réconciliation,
processes of healing and
pour aller de l'avant en
reconciliation
semant
may
l'espérance
continue,
pour les générations
and so that
futures
seeds of hope
autochtones et de
can keep
non-autochtones
being sown for future generations, indigenous and non-indigenous alike,
Pero quisiera
who desire to
decirles,
live together in harmony
a la
as
conclusión
brothers and
de esta
sisters.
intensa peregrinación, que si he venido animado por estos deseos, regreso a casa mucho más enriquecido, porque llevo en el corazón el tesoro incomparable hecho de personas y de pueblos que me han marcado, de rostros, sonrisas y palabras que permanecen en mi interior, de historias y lugares que no podré olvidar, de sonidos, colores y emociones que vibran fuerte en mí.
Mais je voudrais vous dire, presque à la fin de cette
Now
intense
that I am nearing the end of this intense pilgrimage, I want to tell you that although I came with these desires, I am now returning home greatly enriched. I bear in my heart the incomparable treasure of all those individuals and peoples who have left a mark on me, the faces, smiles, and messages that remain with me, the unforgettable stories and natural beauties.
Realmente puedo decir que durante mi visita fueron sus realidades, las realidades indígenas de esta tierra, las que visitaron mi alma, entraron en mí y siempre me acompañarán. Me atrevo a decir, si me lo permiten, que ahora en cierto sentido yo también me siento parte de vuestra familia y me siento honrado. El recuerdo de la fiesta de Santa Ana, vivida junto a varias generaciones y a tantas familias indígenas, permanecerá indeleble en mi corazón. En un mundo que lamentablemente es tan a menudo individualista, qué valioso es ese sentido de familiaridad y de comunidad que es tan genuino entre ustedes, y qué importante es cultivar bien el vínculo entre los jóvenes y los ancianos, y custodiar una relación sana y armoniosa con toda la creación.
Vraiment,
The sounds, the colors, emotions, they've all touched me deeply. I can say that while I came to be with you, it was your life and experiences, the indigenous realities of these lands, that have touched me, remained with me, and will always be a part of me. I dare say, if you will allow me, that now in a certain sense, I also feel part of your family, and for this, I am honored. The memory of our celebration of the Feast of St. Anne with different generations and so many indigenous families will always be impressed on my heart.
Restera indélébile dans mon cœur. Dans un monde malheureusement si
In a world
souvent
that, tragically, is often all too individualistic, how precious is your profoundly genuine sense of family and community? How important it is to cultivate properly the bond between young and old, and to maintain a healthy and harmonious relationship with all of creation.
Queridos amigos, quisiera encomendar al Señor lo que hemos vivido en estos días y la continuación del camino que nos espera en el cuidado atento de quienes saben custodiar lo que es importante en la vida. Pienso en las mujeres, y en 3 mujeres en particular. Ante todo en Santa Ana, de quien pude sentir su ternura y protección, venerándola junto a un pueblo de Dios que reconoce y honra a las abuelas. En segundo lugar, pienso en la Santa Madre de Dios. Ninguna criatura merece más que ella ser definida como peregrina, porque siempre, también hoy, también ahora, está en camino entre el cielo y la tierra, para cuidarnos por encargo de Dios y para llevarnos de la mano hacia su Hijo. Y por último, mi oración y mi pensamiento en estos días han ido frecuentemente a una tercera mujer de presencia afable que nos ha acompañado y cuyos restos se conservan no lejos de aquí. Me refiero a Santa Catalina Tecogüita. La veneramos por su vida santa, pero no podríamos pensar que su santidad de vida, caracterizada por una entrega ejemplar en la oración y el trabajo, así como por la capacidad de soportar con paciencia y dulzura tantas pruebas, no podríamos pensar que esta santidad de vida también fue posible por ciertos rasgos nobles y virtuosos heredados de su comunidad y del ambiente indígena en que creció.
Chers amis, je voudrais confier au Seigneur ce que nous avons vécu.
Dear friends, I would like to entrust all that we have experienced in these days and our pursuit of the path that lies ahead to the loving care of those who best understand how to protect the most important things in life. I am thinking of women, and of 3 women in particular. First, Saint Anne, whose tenderness and protection I could sense as I venerated her, together with a people of God that respects and honors its grandmothers. Second, I think of the Holy Mother of God. No creation deserves to be called a pilgrim more than Mary, for she is always, even today, even at this moment, a pilgrim treading the path between heaven and earth, in order to show us God's care and to lead us by the hand to her Son. Finally, my thoughts and prayers in these days have focused on a 3rd woman, whose quiet presence has accompanied us and whose remains are kept not far from here. I am thinking of Saint Kateri Tekakwitha. We venerate her for her holy life, but we can well imagine that her sanctity, marked by an exemplary devotion to prayer and work, and her ability to endure many trials with patience and meekness, were also made possible by certain noble and virtuous traits inherited from her community and the indigenous environment in which she grew up.
Estas mujeres pueden ayudar a unir, a volver a tejer una reconciliación que garantice los derechos de los más vulnerables y sepa mirar la historia sin rencores y olvidos. 2 de ellas, la Santísima Virgen María y Santa Catalina, recibieron de Dios un proyecto de vida y sin preguntar a ningún hombre dijeron que sí, con valentía. Estas mujeres podrían haber respondido mal a todos los que se oponían a este proyecto, o bien permanecer sujetas a las normas patriarcales de su tiempo y resignarse, sin luchar por los sueños de Dios que Dios mismo había impreso en sus almas. Pero no tomaron esa decisión, sino que con mansedumbre y firmeza con palabras proféticas y gestos resueltos, se abrieron camino y cumplieron aquello a lo que habían sido llamadas. Que ellas bendigan nuestro camino común, que intercedan por nosotros, por esta gran obra de sanación y reconciliación tan agradable a Dios.
Ces femmes peuvent contribuer à rassembler, à tisser
These
un
women
nouveau
can
réconciliation
help us come together against Saint Anne, our Blessed Mother Mary, and Saint Kateri.
Regardez l'histoire.
These women can help us come together and start to weave anew a reconciliation that can uphold the rights of the most vulnerable in our midst and look at history without resentment or forgetfulness. Two of them, Our Lady and Saint Kateri, received from God a plan for their lives
Envers tous ceux
and,
qui s'opposent
without asking any man, courageously
au nom
ascended
du
to
patriarcat
it.
de l'époque et se résigner, sans se battre pour les rêves de Dieu que Dieu lui-même avait imprimés dans leur âme.
These two women
Ils n'ont pas fait ce
could have responded irately to anyone who opposed that plan,
et des gestes décisifs.
or simply submitted to the patriarchal rules of the time and given up, without battling for the dreams that God Himself had inspired in them. They chose not to do that, but instead, with meekness and determination, with prophetic words and decisive gestures, they blazed a trail and accomplished what they had been called to do.
Por favor, que sigan rezando por mí.
Je vous bénis de tout cœur et je vous demande, s'il vous plaît, de
May they
continuer
bless the journey we now share and intercede for us, and for this great work of healing and reconciliation that is so pleasing to God. I bless all of you from my heart, and I ask you please to continue to pray for me. Thank you. That was the Holy Father's remarks to a delegation of Indigenous peoples in Quebec City. That event is taking place at the Archbishop's residence, Cardinal Lacroix. That is the last public event that Pope Francis will be participating in Quebec City. From this point, he will be headed to Iqaluit. Now the Holy Father meeting with those Indigenous who have gathered for this event. It is again a private event. And the meeting consists of survivors of Indian residential schools, 22 delegates from Eastern Canada, multiple First Nations represented, including the Mi'kmaq Nation, Algonquin Nation, Mohawk, Cree, Innu, Atikamek, Malisite, Abenaki, Nisqually Nation. And those nations represent a variety of different regions, including Ontario, the Atlantic, of course in Quebec as well. There's also the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. Now, this meeting, the individual greetings, as you would have just seen on screen, they're like many of the quiet moments that we've seen with the Holy Father. So there isn't going to be any further broadcast of any kind of ceremony. If you've been joining us with coverage for our coverage throughout the week, you may have seen different gifts being presented by Indigenous leaders. There was a war bonnet, so on and so forth. However, in this case, this is more of a quiet meeting that took place today. In fact, it started a bit earlier than what was scheduled. The Holy Father began his remarks about 20 minutes early. He does have a very packed day. From this point, he will be headed to the airport, where he will fly from Quebec City to Iqaluit for the third and final leg of this papal visit. And Iqaluit, he will have a private meeting with some Indigenous representatives, and then he'll participate in more of a public gathering. There'll be a public celebration, and he'll be arriving around 5 p.m. Eastern shortly thereafter. And prior to that, there will have been a celebration, a community celebration with a variety of different program features that celebrate Indigenous culture. Certainly, very much Inuit culture will be a focus of the Iqaluit visit. And the Holy Father will also have an opportunity to participate in some of that. There will be obviously some drumming and dance and some gifts presented, and he'll provide a remark. Those remarks will be specific to young people and to the elders, and that will be taking place later this afternoon. Of course, you can visit slmedia.org for our full broadcast schedule. Now, prior to this event where the Holy Father met with this Indigenous delegation representing 22 delegates representing a variety of different First Nations throughout Atlantic Canada, Ontario, and Quebec, the Holy Father met with his brother Jesuits. There was a private meeting. As is custom, the Holy Father, when he travels to different countries, as a gesture of fraternity, and fraternity which he spoke about at Vespers last night, he does make an effort to meet with members of his order, the Society of Jesus. So that was a closed meeting, and our own Father Fogarty, the CEO of Salt and Light Television, had an opportunity to be part of that. We spoke with him about that a few days ago. He was very excited. It really is an opportunity to come together with his brother Jesuits, and also to meet with the Pope. Certainly a very exciting moment for them. Other than that, and this meeting, it is a lot of air travel today. In fact, a few thousand kilometers to Nunavut, to Iqaluit. But we will be very excited to bring you the closing moments and the farewell where he will be leaving Canada. I did want to take a moment just to talk a little bit about some of the events that took place yesterday, specifically Vespers. That was at the Notre Dame Cathedral in Quebec City. Really an incredibly beautiful setting for Vespers, where he gathered with bishops, priests, with deacons, consecrated persons, seminarians, and pastoral workers. You can see images of that event, of his arrival, and he had a very very insightful homily, I would say, or address, at least during Vespers, where he spoke about three important actions by priests, by the clergy, by the pastoral workers. Those challenges being to make Jesus known, to be a witness, and fraternity. Now, interestingly, really those could apply to lay people. And of course, the setting for this cathedral is very special, because it is where the tomb of Bishop Francois de Laval is. And Bishop Francois de Laval, considered one of the founders of the Canadian Church, really one of the founders of the church in North America, and dating back to the 1600s, where he established a seminary. He really grew the territory in terms of priests and of religious and of parishes, and really a huge figure in Catholic Canadian history. The Holy Father quoted him multiple times. It's interesting, today the Holy Father's address to the Indigenous, where he spoke of three women, Saint Anne, who we've heard quite a bit about over the last few days, this week, of course, featuring the feast day of Saint Anne. And in fact, there we're seeing the tomb there where the Holy Father had an opportunity to pause for a moment in prayer. Certainly a very special moment.
That he gave to us there, to see the presence of God in the faces of all those that we meet. I thought one to the church before, and I think that's what Pope Francis was also touching on.
Worth noting about this moment too, there is a reliquary of other Canadian saints at the tomb. What a wonderful opportunity to really take a look at some of the huge figures in the Canadian Church history. Marie de Incarnation, Blessed Catherine de Saint-Augustin. So this was really a wonderful moment for Pope Francis to see a slice of Canadian Catholic history, as you could say. And then, of course, the Holy Father wasn't about staying in the past. He spoke quite a bit about moving forward. It's been that that common theme that he's had throughout his journey of walking forward together and looking forward, and much like the other addresses that he had, or the other homilies he's spoken about, the sense of hope and the sense of joy. Certainly some very beautiful and touching words by Pope Francis. Now, if you're interested in reading a little bit more closely as to what he's been saying, certainly visit our blog, slmedia.org/blog. You can find his address from last night, from Vespers, from his homily from St. Anne de Beaupré, and also his remarks to the Indigenous delegates this morning in Quebec City. As well, follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook for more content related to this papal trip. And our time together is winding down, not only just for this particular program, but also for our visit of the Holy Father. He will be headed off to Iqaluit shortly. That component won't be broadcast. We won't be seeing his departure. However, we will be coming to you live later today from Iqaluit for a community programming and an address from the Holy Father to elders and to young people, and then, of course, his farewell, where he wraps up his tour to Canada, his pilgrimage of penance. But for now, that concludes our program for this morning and the Holy Father's meeting with an Indigenous delegation in Quebec City. Thank you very much for joining us. For all of us here at Salt and Light Television, I'm Matthew Harrison. God bless.